In today's world, it doesn't matter how good your ideas are, what matters more is how many people listen to you and how willing they are to support you. With the increase of social media influence, anyone can develop a voice and get a following, but the people who do it best are not always the ones with the best intentions. And in this video, we will see 5 psychological secrets that can make you more influential and engaging no matter who you want to convince and how fast you want to do it. Hi, my name is Matteo, and over the past years I have trained countless people in the art of persuasive communication, using a plethora of rhetoric, neuro-linguistic programming, and even dating skills sometimes. And the very first rule or secret we are going to elaborate on right now is the one of putting or placing emotions before words. But there is a specific way of doing that. Because you see, the same exact message can be said in like 1000 different ways. You can say the same thing in a harsh way or in a very soft way. You can talk really fast and go straight to the point, or you can take some time to embellish the story and lead the mind of the person to your point. And you can use very strong, difficult, insulting language, or you can be extremely polite and nurturing, caressing your message and the mind of your listener. All of that to say that depending on the person, you may not want to say the same thing exactly in the same way. One of the best examples is, let's say you talk to somebody who is already kind of irritated or pissed off about what you say, or let's say about the values that you represent. In such a case, if you start trying to make a long story 20 minutes long to lead the person to your point, that person will likely just not even listen to anything you say and just remain stuck in their own head about the harsh response they are going to give you once you're done. Whereas if you just use very brief and short sentences, it is a good way to catch their attention more easily and get them out of their own bubble of negativity so that they get more engaged with what you say before leading to your final point.
I've been watching you for the past 2 months, so not that long. I just wanted to talk about when at times you get overwhelmed and you become agitated and then you begin to swear.
No, I swear regardless of being agitated.
Well, you haven't sworn in the last 10 minutes.
That's because I'm on TikTok.
Second big rule, this time more aimed at a situation where you have to influence the group, or at least when there are more than one person in the room with you. In that case, I would say to always aim your message at the most influential or maybe even a scary person or aggressive person in the room. Because when you can calm down and appease the most aggressive person or the most authoritative person in the room, then anyone else will be much more likely to follow you. I had a great example with this because I used to do a lot of fighting sports and get in touch with many bouncers over the years, and one thing I noticed myself and heard many times from bouncers is a group of guys trying to fight in a club or something like this is not always that scary, because it is very, very scarce that all of them have the same level of courage and capacities and physical capacities. Usually you have one really loud mouth in the group and the others who are more like followers in most cases. So if you can calm down physically in those cases the most aggressive vocal person in the group, the other ones in many cases won't be as courageous against you. That is for the physical aspect if you are a bouncer. Then for the more gentle way, when only verbal communication is required in less tense environments, you can also just aim anything you have to say by looking and physically turning straight to the one person that you know has more authority in the group. When you can aim your message and convince the most authoritative person in the group, then anyone else around will be much more likely to just shut down and listen to what you have to say, because there is already the credit and the validation somehow of the person you had to get credit from. Big rule number 3, coming hand in hand, I would say, with the last one, it is to use flattery but maintain boundaries when it is necessary. What I mean by that is also something coming back from the book, the famous book of Robert Cialdini, Influence, when he talks about the concept of likability. Whether we like to admit that or not consciously, we are always more tempted to give a positive response, or to give more money, or to just say yes more easily to somebody who made us feel good about ourselves or about what we think of ourselves. So using short phrases like, you know, I don't really like what you say, but I do have to admit that you have done impressive research on the topic. Even if that is slightly fake, and even if you don't totally believe what you just said, the simple fact of saying something positive about your interlocutor, even if that seems overly dumb, some part of their limbic brain that thinks in deeper ways than their logic still starts considering you as an ally more than an enemy. So take into consideration the possibility to use some flattery from flattering their ego sometimes. That will get that person more likely to listen, even if you have a beef with them, even if they know they want to tell you no about your project, or because they don't like what you say. At least they will be more likely to listen, because they're like, okay, I don't like this guy, or I don't like the things they represent, but I know this one, at least we can talk with him. At least we can talk with that person. He's not like everyone else of his political part or whatever. I know this one is different. Maybe in the end you are the worst, who knows, but the fact of having been flattering their ego, even if that seems childish and useless and like a super simple, oversimplified, that still works miracles. The only limit, therefore, enunciated in the title of this rule, is to only stop doing that if you have been openly insulted personally by somebody. In that case, either tell them clearly you are stepping out of line, or just don't respond, and in any case, stop being nice and polite with them to show that they crossed a line. Otherwise, if you don't do that, you may just get into the role of the people pleaser, and everyone may try to take advantage of you because they know you won't react anyway. Rule number 4 is to resolve personal conflicts, internal conflicts and issues privately whenever you have the opportunity to do so. This is maybe the most important aspect and rule of this whole video, and out of those 5, because quite often, I would even argue every time you enter into a massive conflict with somebody, it is because that person has triggered somehow a conflict that was already existing within yourself. When there is too much emotional garbage lying there in the depth of your unconscious mind for years and years and even decades ago, when too much gets projected onto the conversation, you may end up into conflicts that are useless, that are leading nowhere, and that may happen specifically with one type of person or into one specific type of situation. When that is the case, when it happens regularly that you enter in conflict with this one person or the type of situation you don't like getting into, just ask yourself, if you get irritated or if somebody makes you feel defenseless and you don't know how to respond, who, in your opinion, in your memory, in the back of your mind, who was the first person who made you feel this way? Who was the first person who made you feel so irritated or defenseless in your life? Because chances are, first of all, this was coming from your family in many cases, and if there is a conflict with that person, you may need to deal with that privately on your own with a therapist eventually, to avoid those same situations getting triggered again and again in the workplace or in your business or in any environment where you regularly engage into conflict. What type of person tends to trigger you the most, and how can you trace that back to a specific type of individual who caused that response from you from the very beginning? Once this is resolved and taken care of, you will realize how much more freedom you can experience in your communication every day and how more influential you can become, because you won't have all this garbage polluting your mind and preventing you from being more authentic whenever you have to communicate with others and influence them positively. And rule number 5 is none other than using activation verbs, something known from the Milton model in NLP, any verb that will trigger the mind to activate some mental processes more easily. Because if you just tell somebody to go do something, that person may have some resistance with the instructions you just gave them. But using verbs like imagine, realize, can you picture this, I would like you to invent something, I would like you to remember, if you were able to remember this right now, or create and start to, all of those verbs tend to activate more mental processes, and they go fish for hidden resources in the mind of the person listening to you. So if you use any of those verbs when you give instructions and explain to people what you would like them to do, even if they don't like you, you are more likely to activate the deeper parts of their mind so that they incorporate more of their personal experiences on the words you say. Because any word does not really have any meaning by itself, despite the dictionary and the definitions inside that big book. Most of the words we use every day don't really have any definition by themselves. They have the emotional connotation we have associated with them. Especially right now, if I tell you the left or the right or the far left or the far right, those words may evocate to you in your mind stronger emotional reactions than the ones presented in the dictionary. When you start to communicate with somebody and you want them to engage more easily with what you say, using those verbs, do you realize, can you imagine for a second, can you pose and picture that you are appealing more of their personal experiences to associate with what you say. So using those verbs to give commands or orders or any kind of suggestion, that will get them much more likely to receive your message in a positive way, because anything that comes from inside our mind or perceived as being coming from inside our mind is much less resisted than anything that comes from the outside or anything that we perceive as coming from the outside. Therefore, you can persuade anyone much more easily with those words. And if you want to get deeper on the complete strategy to influence anyone at will whenever you want to persuade with only a few phrases, you have a document down below in the description called The 7 Steps to Master Sleight of Mouth, which is one of the biggest language technology ever invented, so that you can model the ways effective public speakers and negotiators are using every day. You can find that down below and start practicing your skills as soon as you want it, so that you by yourself become more influential whenever you need that.